This is the place. Doesn't look like much.
Hello everyone, welcome to BİM YouTube channel. My name is Asena and today we have Martin COYNE, BİM Practice Manager of KPF, and Orkun BEYDAÐI, who is Project BİM Specialist at KPF. So, hello.
Hello.
Hello.
Everyone.
Hi. Today we are here for a talk that we are waiting for a quite long time. This is, I suppose, our 53rd BİM Talks interview. So most of our followers already know what we're doing and how we're doing it, but I want to just go shortly over the what in English once again. BİM is a community consisting of many people from different occupations such as students, academicians, architects, engineers, etc., and who are gathered on the basis of building information modeling. We have a particular team which we call BİM Kitchen, and which I'm also a part of that BİM Kitchen. We, under the normal circumstances, started these interviews as face-to-face ones, and we were planning to make it with you like that because we were just, trying to arrange it like earlier this year. But, after the COVID-19 situations, we just had to make it like in an online broadcast. So this is also our first attempt to reach some offices and people in UK and extend our network. So thank you for attending this broadcast. Also, I would like to thank Cenk to make this connection, and because he put a lot of effort on this. And we also just have so many emails, I have visited the office and everything. At last we are here and I'm very happy about that. To begin with, I would like to ask Martin and Orkun to tell us about themselves and how and when their career at KPF started. And if you can just introduce KPF a little bit to us, that would be very great.
Of course, no. Thanks for having us. They're really, really glad to be taking part. I'll just share my screen quickly with a couple of slides. Can you see that okay?
Yes, we can see.
Perfect. So just a quick introduction. So I'm Martin COYNE. I'm BİM Practice Manager at KPF. I've started there just over 7 years ago now. I'm a designer by trade, a trained architect here in the UK. And I was originally in a previous company, I started heading into the BIM role. I was mixing design with kind of establishing BIM strategy for the company and training people. And when a role came up at KPF, it's a company I've admired for many years, kind of loved their work. And a role came up that was a chance to move into more of a BIM focus, a real chance to kind of help make my mark on such a practice. And yeah, 7 years later, I'm still loving the job. Look after a lot of day-to-day BIM strategy, how we use our software, but do troubleshooting and all sorts of things. And yeah, no, really enjoy it. Orkun, do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yes. I'm Orkun. This is I'm in KPF on for around 2 years. But I'm a project BIM specialist, which in its definition, I'm mostly working with projects that involves BIM. But KPF is more like a fluid company that is not very much defined with your title. So also like a designer as well, and like working, as an architectural designer. But on the BIM side, mainly like I'm putting more effort, but I'm more hands-on on the projects. And like taking it from from through stages and deliver. Yeah.
Perfect. So I'll just give a super quick introduction to KPF. So the image on the left-hand side is the entrance to our office in New York, where we're just kind of in central Manhattan, and that's the New York Public Library just opposite, for those who know New York. And on the right-hand side is the front door to our London office, where we're lucky to show Asina around. Unfortunately, we can't take you on a live tour of the office today. Perhaps someday we'll get to show you around. Let us know if you're ever in London. But that's our office in Covent Garden. It's in a fantastic converted warehouse. Possibly, if you know the kind of work of KPF, that might not be the kind of setting you're expecting. But a quick bit of background to what we're doing. So we were founded in New York in 1976. We've been growing over the past few years. We now have 9 offices globally. Sort of New York and London are the main design offices, and also do some design work out of our Singapore office. And we also have more delivery-focused offices in Shanghai and Hong Kong, among others. I think this slide is, as of a week or so ago, is possibly out of date now, but until very recently, we were responsible for 6 of the tallest 11 towers in the world. I think we've dropped down a couple, and it's now 6 of the tallest 12. But that's a lot of our day-to-day work. We do really tall towers. That's probably what we're most known for, and what you might recognize some of our projects for. In terms of staff, we're still growing quite steadily. We've got about 670 plus staff at the last count, heading towards 700, with employees from 54 different countries speaking at least 40 different languages. Our structure is we're led by 31 different principals and 46 directors. And like Orkun says, that the structure is quite fluid. We're not like some practices that have a rigid studio structure. You'll often find different principals partnering up with each other to deliver different projects in different parts of the world. These are just a few of our schemes to just kind of show you the variety of sort of scales, materials, and textures we work on. Like I say, a lot of towers, but also some kind of a smaller scale cultural and academic projects. Just touching on some of the towers, this is some of our probably better known ones. So the Heron Tower here in London, One Vanderbilt, which has recently topped out in New York, literally sort of 2 minutes walk from our office there, right next to Grand Central Station. The office has really made the mark on the New York skyline there. And one of our more recognizable towers on the right is the Shanghai Finance Center, quite an iconic tower over there. But at the opposite end of the scale, this is a project 2 minutes walk from the London office. This is the neighborhood that we're based in London, around Covent Garden, if you know the city. And here we work on a much more smaller scale, much more intimate, and kind of really blending in with the local fabric. So the building you can see down at the end of the street there is KPF's intervention there. Generally, just in terms of typologies, we work across residential. We're doing a lot more mixed use, so kind of master plans and buildings that bring together lots of different purposes. Now we do some hospitality schemes, things like hotels and casinos. A lot of our work is office and commercial space. From the New York office, we do quite a lot of academic projects, so kind of universities and things like that. And more, we're doing a lot of master plans globally. Just a quick note on how we work in terms of technology. So the real sort of technology journey started about the early 2000s, starting to work with people like Dr. Robert Aish with implementing computational geometry in the very, very early days of that as a discipline. Jumping forward a bit, around 2007, we implemented our first Revit project. We had a complex lab project in America where there was miles and miles of services that we needed to work out how to fit into the building. So it was a natural fit to kind of test out Revit for the first time. Obviously, Revit's come on a long way since then. And then kind of running through the intervening years, we've been kind of exploring various technologies. So VR, AR, we have our KPF UI team based out of New York that look at a lot of kind of computational methods to understand how a building fits in with the city around it. A couple of years ago as well, we revamped our environmental performance team. It's kind of really trying to understand how our buildings perform. Generally, in terms of digital practice, we can touch a bit on this on some of the questions, but it used to be very separate disciplines. So the computational designers would be embedded in the team, and the KPF BIM team would probably work with a slightly different group of people within each project team. And it's sometimes difficult to kind of maintain communication between them, just make sure we're all working to the same goals. So what we've done in the past year is really kind of reinvent how we work as a digital practice, which brings together computation, BIM, visualization, and our makerspace team. So the people who look after manufacturing and 3D printing. And we're now working as a single team that engages with projects. Just you don't have the people sitting in Rhino on one side of the office, the people working in Revit on the other side, and sort of no communication between them. We're sort of really working to a common goal now. Just to quickly touch, this is how the sort of how we work within the practice. So we have a core team of specialists, people like myself, that kind of set the strategy, that build up the standards and templates and things like that. We then work with people like Orkun that are more heavily embedded in the projects, especially more complex projects that people like Orkun tend to be involved with. So we work with them to kind of exchange ideas and kind of push our standards out through them. And the idea being that with these super users embedded in the projects, they can then help to influence the team around them and kind of upskill everyone across the practice. And the other thing we've been doing, or really trying hard on recently, is to kind of communicate beyond that super user group that often a lot of people had all the technical knowledge stuck inside their heads to be working away on projects. We've introduced things like all these pictures are from our Global Tech Day, which took place luckily just before lockdown hit most of our offices earlier this year. And that's where we sort of kind of had a whole day where the technology team took over the office for the whole day. We had a series of talks, we had guest speakers, and different people came in to show different bits of technology, both software and hardware, and just really make sure that no matter how many emails you send out or intranet posts you make, people still don't always know exactly what's available to them. So this was really an opportunity to kind of make sure they were aware of what we were doing and what we were working on and what technology was there at their fingertips. So yeah, so that's a quick, hopefully fairly quick introduction.
Yeah, thank you for that. It was really briefly show what you're doing. But I want to mention that, I was very lucky to visit you in your office, because I really liked, while I was, having a tour in your office, I could see all the, teams and offices and the 3D print studio and, the hall that you're hosting some events. That was quite impressive. So thank you for talking about that too. So I want to just go over deep about, the office structure and how you work. If you can tell us a little bit about your workflow and how you work, how you start the project from the beginning and how you complete it. Are you divided as the design teams and everything, or it's just a team takes everything and completes the project? Can you tell us about this?
Sure. So just taking our London office as an example, we've got 6 principals there, and each of them works in a slightly different way. So they kind of tend to specialize on certain different projects or markets. But like I say, it's not a rigid structure. And quite often those principals will get together and share projects and work together. And within those teams, we don't find that it's not like some offices where if you're working for one principal or one studio, that's where you stay. It's really open for people to move between teams. So if they've got particular interests or things they want to focus on, or from the other side, if they've got skills that a certain team needs, people regularly move around between different teams. So in terms of actually delivering the projects, it'll typically start with a principal and one or two designers coming up, rapidly iterating kind of designs and ideas. I think Orkun will touch on this a bit more later with the exact process and software we use in that. What we used to do, used to be kind of somebody would work in Rhino. Quite often that's computationally driven with Grasshopper. So people would be kind of working on the massing. And that would often be accompanied by people quickly sketching things out in 2D in AutoCAD. So you'd have the more design-focused people perhaps working in Rhino, almost sculpting the building, and possibly more technically minded people just kind of looking at the layout in 2D, just trying to make sure that the interior of the building fits. And obviously then kind of having the conversation to bring the two together to make sure that the whole building fits together and it's a strong piece of architecture. More and more we've started to move that process into BIM early on. So things like tracking areas and kind of apartment numbers, doing more of that in BIM in early stages. We find some of the designers are more concept focused. So they'll help to get a project up and running, they'll help to shape it, and then they might step off onto a different competition or a different project that's just starting up. As far as we can, if people want to, we try and let them see through as much of a project as possible. Certainly in London, we've had people who've worked on the scheme from concept through to completion on site. But it really depends on sort of the timeline of the project. Obviously, a lot of our projects might take 5, 6, 7 years or more to deliver. So obviously, it depends how long you're with the firm, but we really do try and allow people to kind of get the experience they want. So if somebody finds they're specialising in concept design, or at the other end, the kind of the technical design and on-site delivery, you can find yourself specialising in that. At the same time, we do have a lot of people that kind of want to see an entire project through and experience every stage, especially earlier in their career, where you just get that kind of wide and varied experience. But I always use the example that in KPF, one day you might be working on a Victorian brick detail in Covent Garden, working out how two bricks fit together to look nice. And the next day you can be working on a 600-metre tall glass facade. And scale. So it's a little bit of everything. Like I think Orkun described it the best way. It's kind of fluid that project teams develop with the skills they need, and individuals develop as they move between projects as well.
Yeah, it's quite interesting to work on, different projects with different scales and different subjects. But what we wonder is that how much part does BIM takes part in your office? Because do you work with BIM in every project, or depends on the client? Even the client, the project does not request a building information modeling system, do you prefer to go on like that, or you just, how do you, adapt your projects to building information modeling?
Well, the standard rule is every project should go into Revit at least by planning stage. So when it goes into schematic design, ideally everything will move into Revit then. Some projects, especially in Orkun's team, and I'll let him talk about that a bit more in a second, the leaders of that team like to start really early in BIM. They really see the benefits of tracking things. But what we tend to find is, even where we say we'll use BIM on every project, a lot of clients still, and some of them say, we just like you to use BIM. There's no real requirements. Those are the projects. We've got a couple where they sent through like 100-page documents on what they want out of the BIM process. So there's always a couple that kind of slip through the net and don't move into BIM because of timelines or things like that, just the kind of the requirements of the project. But the vast majority are kind of fully delivered in BIM. And yeah, it's sometimes tricky to kind of merge that with the design world. But Orkun, perhaps you can talk about your experience of BIM at KPF.
I was thinking, yeah, maybe I can like share my screen, just especially on this topic. Can you see it currently? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So yeah, like especially like after your question, it's what we see, like it's the BIM as a really like not just a software thing, but like how all these like different kind of design software that will all work together in under one thing. So it's not only like Revit or ArchiCAD or anything, but of course, well, like we mainly use Rhino, as also Martin mentioned, especially in early design stages. We do AutoCAD for like quick like sketches, and also like we do renders in like sometimes real time in Rhino or Revit, or sometimes like V-Ray or and those kinds of things. But the very important point is like how we get those things all together under one workflow. So everything, well, I think the text is a bit altogether. Anyway, it's I think it gives the idea, like how, for instance, in Rhino, like the layer system works. How can we like map those structure into Revit to the share parameters and everything? So this is actually like meaning that we have one model that works in all different softwares, all different kind of mediums, and they are all linked together. So that when you make a change in one software, then it also has an effect on the other one. Sometimes this does in real time. Sometimes it goes through the process of import and exporting, but at least like everything is structured under one system. So that's why, like especially in KPF, especially the projects that I worked on was mainly early design stages that we use Rhino a lot because design is constantly changing. Like, you know, 1 week is different than the another. Like we always test so many different options, and all these options needs to be documented and needs to be like presented, and also needs to go to the consultants and everything. So that's why we definitely need to use all these different mediums. I specifically want to mention about like how we work with the complex geometries, because especially the group I'm working in is we are doing more of like I can say maybe like curvature, not complex, because a complex is a different term, but like more grift geometries. So, you know, and how to deal them in the BIM environment is a real challenge, as all of us know. But there we come up with, as I say, with those like these workflows, we come up with different solutions that I think it works very well for the whole practice. So of course, like there are different methods which are like direct shape, like importing things into like Revit as direct shape, or face-based elements, or adaptive components. We are working specifically with Rhino Insight currently. I mean, we are looking into more getting our workflow into Rhino Insight, but we believe there's really a potential there, which is really helpful for us to convert the Rhino geometry into Revit. For this direct shape, especially when we are working in concept and schematic design phases in the early design stages, by keeping the component information with shared parameters in Revit, it's really useful to do the both modeling and documentation in Revit by using direct shapes in Rhino. We mostly use these like face-based elements, especially when the model is when the geometry is curvature. And the very important point is like we had quite a bit of know-how on how to model things in Rhino, because it's really important. You can't just take everything from CAD software to BIM software, which is like, how to now properly model an surface with orderly distributed surface UVs. You need to like penalize things, rebuild, like you need to keep in mind about the edge order and the back faces and everything. And that gives us a proper method on how to build things in those face-based elements in Revit. And also we use, of course, adaptive components. We try to use it as less as possible because it's very memory and space consuming. But sometimes it's the only way to do it. And we have a really huge know-how on how to do adaptive components. We use a lot of like Grasshopper in that sense, because things like Rhino and Revit all work together. We get like through Grasshopper to Excel, those like the coordinates, and through to Revit again. This is like a summary of how we convert these like geometries. And as you see, like sometimes it goes through a geometry file by simple importing and exporting, depending on the user's experience. If they are well experienced through like Dynamo, or like Rhino Insight workflow. So if not, then we use like import and exporting. But it works quite well in our sense. So as I say, like SAT import, Dynamo, or like Rhino Insight, and through this Rhino Insight, we are like trying to get this like workflow on how to convert these things in real time. This is an example of how a Revit model has been converted into Rhino with the family information, materials like colors, and like all necessary like parameters that needs to come, so that a user that works in Rhino, let's say designs a facade, can directly take the Revit geometry and can work on top of that. And in addition, actually, this is quite important. How we document these geometries is another thing. We like, let's say in this example, this is like a dome geometry that we are penalizing, and then we had to explain the RCP, which like the sprinklers and lightings, and like how all these panels are going to be set up. Of course, this is impossible with a regular ICP. So therefore, like we come up with this like system about like, we basically model things in Rhino in how it needs to be like explained, and convert them into 2D drawings. And then later these drawings are going to be converted into Revit lines by simple plugins, and then it becomes like an entity in Revit that you can use your annotation symbols and stuff that make it and then document those geometries. Yeah, this is sort of the process that people.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Orkun. I think we have some questions, so we can have a question before we go on with the other things. Yeah, this was one of the questions that I want to ask to you as well. How COVID affected your works? Are you still working in your office or home? And also I want to ask, how you adapted your workflow to this, situation.
Sure. Yeah, we're largely working from home. So since the middle of March, when the UK went onto lockdown, luckily we'd had a few practice runs where we sent the whole office home for a day, so we could test that all the systems worked, kind of made sure that complex software like Revit and Rhino worked on our virtual platform so that everyone could work from wherever they were in the world. And luckily it's been working really well. We're just starting to let people back into the office if they want to go in. Luckily the system seems to be running really well. So if you want to carry on working from home, there's no pressure from the office yet to go back in. But Orkun's one of our test subjects. He volunteered to go into the office today. How did you find it in the office?
It was quite well. The only thing is, like, I still use Frame, our virtual platform, to work on it, because this was working even better than my like desktop computer in the office. So it's quite working very well. Our like work from home thing. Yeah, in the office it was a bit quiet. Like, people were mainly in their homes still, so it was a bit weird. Of course, it's not the usual office environment. But yeah, I volunteered myself to slowly, like, start to be, like, to go into normal.
Yeah, the only
Is
reason. Sorry, go on.
is it start to be like everywhere in the office is empty? Because I saw that normally it was very crowded and busy office.
Yeah, like, I can say we were like just 5 people in the whole floor, so this was quite quiet.
Yeah, I think that's been the biggest change to our workflows. That, like you say, it's kind of a very lively office. A lot of communication, a lot of meetings, a lot of people sat around drawings and sketching, especially in the team Orkun's with. They've got a kind of a large tablet where everyone meets and discusses a project. So it's been a little bit tricky kind of working out how we communicate with, like, Zoom calls, and we're all on Microsoft Teams constantly messaging each other. So we don't have that direct interaction. But I think after a couple of weeks, everyone got the hang of speaking to each other remotely, and I don't think it's really affected the way we work too much. We sort of found the new normal that everyone refers to. So, yeah, we definitely miss the atmosphere in the office. It's a good place to work.
The new normal is a quite good phrase to just explain the situation. I wonder something as well. How do you adapt the central files in Revit while you're working from home?
So as Orkun mentioned, our main way of working from home is using the Frame platform, which is a virtual PC. So when you log on a morning, it brings up a whole virtual PC that I can't go into exactly how it works. It's kind of not my speciality, but it lives on AWS, on the Amazon servers, and it's directly connected to all our servers. So you can be working from anywhere in the world, and it's like you're working live in the office. So in theory, it should be even quicker to synchronize with the central model, just because it's like co-located with all our data. So it should be a lot faster. We have a handful of people that work on office laptops and that connect via VPN. Certainly a lot more people in our New York office are working that way. But yeah, so once everyone's settled into that, everyone just works in Revit as normal. You just kind of open the file, take a local copy either on your laptop or with Frame on your virtual machine, and just synchronize as normal. Although we just introduced a tool as well that reminds everyone to make sure they sync once an hour, because when you're not sat with your team and you don't get people next to you going, I need to use this, please can you use it? We installed a little tool from Parallax that turns on the toolbars red just to remind you, and stops you working for more than an hour without syncing, just so we don't get lost information anywhere.
I had problems with that, but got used to it in the end. With all these, like, you can't do anything else than synchronize after a while. But yeah, it becomes useful because then you don't lose the work. Yeah.
It was strict, but it meant we're not losing any work once we're working remotely. People get used to it.
Yeah, somehow Martin seems happy to work from home. Yeah, because he's happy with the system. I think it works. So we have another question: how we can apply for job interview for KPF? I want to add something for this question. I mean, is there anyone started in your office during this situation while you're working from home? I think this is quite interesting, how you adapt someone while working from home.
Yeah, so we've had about 10 people start so far over the summer. Maybe a couple more. We've got a couple more people that started today, so we've got a steady stream of people joining the office. There are roles we're looking to recruit. If anybody does want to apply for an interview at KPF, if you check out our website and on LinkedIn, we often advertise jobs there. But yeah, it's been interesting, and I must admit, I find it hard to imagine what it's like from the new starter's perspective when you join a company and you've not actually met the people, you've only spoke to them over Zoom in your interview, that we're giving them, I think, virtual tours of the office. So it's like, when eventually we get back to the office, this is where we'll work. We sort of, we set up a video call with all the usual teams that take part in induction. On their second day, I'll sit with them over a Zoom call for an hour or so and take them through all our technology. But yeah, we sort of, because of our virtual platform, because of Frame, it means as long as someone's got a reasonable internet connection and laptop or computer at home, we just give them access to our Frame servers and they can start working from day one. So luckily, everyone that's joined so far seems to have settled into this way of working quite easily. I'd say it's a very strange way to join a company. Obviously, your first day, you normally get shown around. Here's the kitchen. Here's your desk. What to do. You don't get any of that anymore. You just sit in your dining table or in your office and just and join KPF. So it's, like I say, it seems to have been a success so far. But I'm keen to check in with all those people who joined us this summer and just see how they found the experience.
That's nice. So we can have one more question. Are you using BIM in your every project? Actually, I asked this question a little bit, but I want to add something to this question as well. How do you explain the situation of BIM within the UK? Because, you know, this also can explain this question, because if you say like every client wants BIM for every project, you obviously go for every project, but how do you, how do you say how much people are familiar to BIM in UK?
Sure. So in our London office, about half of our projects are in London in the UK, the other half are overseas. So we really see like both sides of it. Obviously, we've got a few projects in Turkey as well, especially the Ziraat Bank headquarters. But in the UK, where we had the BIM mandate back in 2016, so the government said, right, all publicly funded projects, everything that the government was paying for, they said has to use BIM. Most of KPF's projects are private sector, so we don't tend to do the public sector ones like schools and hospitals. But what we still found was that because the contractors that we work with on the large scale buildings KPF does, so people like Skanska and people like that, Mace and other contractors in the UK, they were all working on the big schools and hospitals. So they came to us and said, look, excuse me, we see BIM in use on these large government projects. We want to do that everywhere. So initially, a few years ago, it was the contractor that was really pushing it. On the client side, we didn't see that much interest initially. There wasn't necessarily that much understanding of BIM at a client level. And we found a lot of people coming into KPF, like straight out of university and from other practices, hadn't necessarily worked with BIM or the Revit and the tools we use. What we've really seen over the past few years, so initially we maybe had one or two clients that were very keen on using BIM, people we've worked for 10 years or more, that really kind of early adopters that said that we should do this on every project. KPF more than happy to obviously do that. What we've seen more in the past couple of years or so is the knowledge of BIM within our clients has really grown, and they ask a lot of questions. They've got very clear ideas of how they want BIM to be applied to their projects. Or they might be working with, a lot of our clients work with BIM consultants. So the client might say, look, we want to improve our construction process, the efficiency of our delivery, but we're not necessarily experts internally. So they're working with a BIM consultant to help define what they want out of that project through employing BIM. So pretty much all of our projects now, we see some requests from the client say that we should at least use BIM. But on more projects, like I say, we're getting really detailed requirements that says exactly how they want it, what they want delivering, what kind of data exports they want. So yeah, it's pretty much the normal in the UK now, certainly on a lot of the projects KPF works on. We find that a lot of the structural engineers and the MEP teams we work with are very sort of happy to engage with BIM. We work very collaboratively with the other main consultants. Outside of that, we see some of the other consultants we work with coming to BIM adoption a bit more slowly. So people like landscape designers, some of those we work with do work in BIM and kind of provide data-rich landscaping models that we can link in. Others still work in 3D, so using software like SketchUp or tools like that. Others still work in 2D. There's very varied levels of adoption within landscape. And the same within cost consultancy or quantity surveying. We work with a couple of partners that even use things like Dynamo to help them like work out the cost of a building. Others are still kind of work more traditionally. So like I say, in the main disciplines, there's a lot of commitment to BIM, so architecture, structure, MEP. Beyond that, in the wider project team, it's slowly picking up. But like I say, a lot of it is increasingly being led by the clients and the contractors that just say, look, this is the most sensible way of working, that we want to make sure this is what you do. And obviously, we're more than happy to take part.
I can maybe add to it in a way that especially in the concept and schematic design stages, if it's not being pushed by the client, then we mostly tend to use more like CAD softwares to start the project. But now internally our also aim is to bring this BIM process starting from the concept design by just getting rid of all the hassle of how to model or how to convert, but just basically how to direct people's knowledge of using CAD software. Now we can just automate those systems in Revit so that it can be like an internally working system that doesn't necessarily be pushed by the client or contractors, but it will improve our the workflow and our efficiency inside the office. Especially these Rhino Insight workflows are going to be a huge, I think, push for getting the BIM more firm-wide or more not just firm but like practice-wide in the whole architecture. It's going to be like a
we've got a big learning program internally at the minute just to get anyone that doesn't know our BIM tools, so things like Revit and Dynamo, and just start introducing that skill to everyone who needs it, just to make sure that anyone can work on any stage of a project in BIM if they need to.
Thank you. We can have one more question, I think, before we finish. Are you using project management tools like Primavera? I don't know the tool, so.
Do you want to go first?
No, that's yeah, you can go. That's
okay. Yeah, so generally, a lot of the project management we tend to find is either done in the UK. A lot of the time, the client will appoint a project manager, or they'll have an internal project manager that works through the schedules and timelines, and the same with the contractors at that stage. What we tend to do, so internally, we use various project management tools, things like Microsoft Planner and various kind of, I forgot the name of the Microsoft tool for kind of doing project flowcharts, that we sort of use that internally to manage projects. What we also use is like coordination and collaboration tools, things like if you've ever heard of like Revisto or things like BIM Collab. Revisto is one of the main ones we're trying to sort of establish in the office at the moment, where it uses the 3D models as a base for collaboration, loads them onto a platform, and you can then assign tasks to people both within KPF and externally. So we use that to we're starting to use that to keep track of who needs to do what model. So you can raise questions. There's a door and a column here together. Please, can someone take a look at this? You can assign it to a certain person. You can set deadlines. Please look at this within a couple of days. Things like that. So we use a range of tools for both project management and coordination. Like I said, the overall responsibility for project management tends to be taken on by someone else, but certainly internally, in terms of KPF tends to act as the design lead, the coordination lead. We use a number of tools just to make sure communication is as smooth as possible across the project.
Thank you. I just said that we can have one more question, but I think we have so many other questions. The other one is, Orkun, do you still think you are more of a designer, not a BIM guy? I think this is one of
exactly. I'm thinking I'm more of both. It's I don't know. Yeah, I'm a designer. I can say and Martin is a designer. We are designing, sometimes workflows, sometimes building, a part of a building, or the whole general practice-wide BIM tools or anything. So in the general wider meaning of designer, we are all designers, and yeah.
I definitely think it's part of being an architect today, or at least an architectural designer, is that you do often find you're merging different skill sets, and that a lot of staff at KPF are both computational designers, they're sort of technical gurus, they know how to get as much as possible out of the BIM process, and at heart they've got a strong design skill and a passion for design. So Orkun sort of ticks all those boxes. And
yeah, we need to be you can be both the BIM guy and the designer, because without being a BIM guy, maybe you can't just be a design guy. Yeah. We can have another question. How do you see the future of BIM worldwide, especially for developing countries? And what do you think about creating a new business in this area?
Yeah, so it's like I said, probably about half
question. Yeah.
So about half our projects from UK are overseas. Some of those are in very different markets. Most markets we've worked in, we've generally seen some level of BIM maturity now. There's very few places I'm aware of where we've not seen any awareness of BIM. I think the UK in some ways has helped to formalize that process. In the UK, they love to write a document about how to do things. So, the UK sort of helps set the global standard for that. Obviously, a lot of other places, certainly Australia, the US, and a lot of the Asian nations that we've worked with, have got very mature approaches to BIM. They might not have as many rules and regulations as we do in the UK, but it's certainly commonplace to exchange information. I'm not sure what you mean by creating a new business in these areas, but generally, if we are working in a new market, we'll generally explain what we do with BIM, and explain how we'll use it on a project. And yeah, we find people in every market very, very open to that method of working.
I can maybe add one more thing into that, especially in about creating a new business in this area, as you said, as things. It's about as Martin explained in his presentation, KPF digital practice has lots of different components in computation, BIM, visualization, makerspace, that all makes that a one single entity, which is this digital practice. KPF is, since KPF is a very large company, it's a node in that. But of course, a new business in that area which complies with all these different components, as been explained, might be a nice the addition, like an important entity in the whole whole architecture world, in like getting because that can fill the need of like the computation or like digital practice in general for the other, like for lots of different small companies, and that can like add as a service. Its services in both like computation, BIM, visualization, and everything. So that can be, I think, like if a new business, I think, needs to have different components as the digital practice in KPF has been trying to do.
Yeah, I think we are finished with questions, except we have a funny question. What actually means KPF? Yeah.
So, should have included a slide of that. So KPF is named after our 3 founders, Gene Cohn, Bill Pedersen, and Sheldon Fox. So Cohn, Pedersen, Fox is our full name. But like a lot of the kind of other famous American firms like SOM, HOK, we tend to just go by KPF.
Yeah. Thank you so much for attending. I think we are all finished with the questions. If you want to add something,
No,
or we can.
Thank
you. Thank you for, I'm very happy to make this happen after all those months, trying to arrange this. Hopefully after the situation goes to normal, maybe we can just go on with our interview in office. We were planning to shoot a video. So thank you for attending. Thank you for our audiences to watch us and listen us. So if you can just bear here for 2 minutes after we finish the broadcast, we would be very happy. And thank you. Good evening, everyone.